Hexagram number 27. The corners of the mouth, providing nourishment. Watch how you nourish yourselves on fantasy, wanting, wondering, worrying, and on feelings of alienation. These constitute a bowl of worms. Pay heed to providing of nourishment and to what a man seeks to fill his own mouth with. In its general sense, nourishment refers to obtaining the necessities of life. This hexagram acknowledges our dependency on the higher power for these necessities and counsels us that to obtain them, we must develop a correct attitude. If our attitude is modest and unassuming, aware of our dependence, we will always receive what we need. Nourishment also refers to what we feed ourselves, the food we eat, the thoughts we think, and the information, facts, and fantasies that we entertain. Just as we should take care that what we eat is wholesome and well balanced, we should have a similar regard to what we allow to enter our minds. For just as food and drink affect, so do ideas. Everything we study in school, read in novels, or watch in the media shapes our inner attitudes in one way or another. Most important are the ideas that we entertain through fantasy. These become absorbed into our thinking by default, unless we are decisive about them. For this reason, the hexagram warns us to take great care not to indulge idly in fantasy. We customarily think this activity harmless. However seemingly harmless, indulgences not only shape our fate, but they also determine how we nourish others. If we maintain an independent yet humble attitude, we have a good effect on others. But if we allow envy, self-pity, hardness, alienation, wanting, dreading, suspicion, and distrust to worm their way into our attitude, our effect is detrimental. Negative elements always enter our minds because we listen to them. Often such elements come from our ego, which stands, as it were, just out of sight behind us, where it can insinuate into our ear the flattering scenarios that justify its plans and schemes. By such means, it slips unobtrusively into command. These scenarios arouse all sorts of fears, doubts, and their consequent emotions. Although they have no relation to reality, we seriously base our actions on them. Through fantasy, we become convinced that certain people, situations, or times in our lives are more important than others. Being convinced of the importance of something disturbs our inner balance. We begin anticipating and watching for the effects we seek. Ambition follows. Then perhaps we use leverage when the desired results are not achieved. A similar problem occurs when we wish to correct what we perceive to be mistakes in important matters. Ambition and fear cause us to lose our inner independence. Instead of trying to remedy the external situation, the I Ching would have us correct our inner attitude and cease indulging in fantasy. The effort required to correct our attitude is always considerable. But we are not meant to become so focused on improvement that we lose our receptivity. In all such circumstances, we need to detach from the situation until we have reestablished our balance. Even though some situations and people are more important to us because they constitute our particular sphere of responsibility, this importance exists only to a point. Holding something as either too important or of no importance goes too far. It is important only that we act and react in a manner that is sincere, modest, and essential, paying no heed to whether people like or dislike us. Beyond doing our best, we must allow to happen what will happen. It is said in this hexagram that the great man nourishes and takes care of superior men in order to take care of all men through them. The most important means of obtaining nourishment from the cosmos is the practice of meditation. Tranquility is restorative. The taming power of the great counsels us to practice self-renewal. This means that daily we should bring ourselves to tranquility. This is done by cleansing our Ching, our inner container for nourishment. Self-cleansing means to clean out all thoughts and allow mental activity to subside. Creating inner space allows the light force to enter with its restorative effects. Being recharged, we radiate peace to others, strengthening and nourishing what is high and good in them. The creative energy flows through us abundantly, giving rise to creative ideas, correct perceptions, and the cosmic view. Thus we find correct solutions to our problems. By placing himself in this state, every great writer invokes the muse. Every inventor sees his invention, and every problem solver finds the next step in solving his problem. Genius is the ability to receive from the cosmos, not as our egos keep hoping and insisting, an ability to contrive and think things up. Contriving generally produces only contrivances. Changing line number 1. You let your magic tortoise go. Misfortune. Through the invasion of doubt and envy, we fall into self-pity and discontent, losing our inner independence. To doubt is to be oppressed by feelings of hopelessness. These soon pervade everything we do. Envy and wanting are communicated to others on the inner plane and give rise to their contempt. We should not allow ourselves to want or to entertain mental images that compare us with others, or that show our situation from a negative viewpoint, or that otherwise undermine our trust in the unknown. It is important to restore our inner independence and self-reliance. This line also refers to times when we allow our inferiors to become annoyed with people who have not disciplined their inferiors. This annoyance soon gives way to feelings that they are tiresome, bothers, and that they are hopeless. Our undisciplined inferiors view self-development and discipline with resistance. As soon as we listen to their complaints, the ego resumes leadership of the personality. Our inferiors secretly long for a life free of responsibilities. They do not yet see that the easy way is a delusion, and that the hard way of modesty, forgiveness, and conscientiousness is infinitely more satisfying, because we do not become enmeshed in self-conflict. To fail to forgive others' pinches and trinkets, the soul and sets into motion the oppression of a false path. Changing line number 2. Deviating from the path to seek nourishment from the hill. Continuing to do this brings misfortune. Though feeling of weakness, we do not. Through a feeling of weakness, we do things in a careless way. For example, we hope to have a better influence by going along with someone else's wrongdoing. Then we trust the sage to provide protection from the consequences. Accepting the sage's help while not making a true effort to be correct is unworthy. It leads to misfortune. Changing line number 3. Turning away from nourishment. Perseverance brings misfortune. Do not act thus for 10 years. The commentary to this line mentions that the gratification of physical desire and the mad pursuit of pleasure for the satisfaction of the senses can never lead to our goal. We often receive this line when our inferiors complain that the path of the sage is too ascetic. And if we follow it, we will never find the happiness we seek. The line, however, is simply a statement of one of the fundamental truths of life, that happiness cannot be attained through the pursuit of pleasure and the gratification of the senses. The lures of seduction and false paths, although they seem to promise happiness, the promise is never fulfilled. Because here we are dealing with delusion. What the line predicts is true. To seek nourishment of the lower self at the expense of the higher self always brings misfortune and suffering. If not now, further down the road. We should also be aware that receiving this line may indicate less obvious forms of nourishment that does not nourish. For example, it may refer to our seeking to have our ego self-image recognized by others. We do this when we argue to prove we are right, or when we strive to change a circumstance to what we think it should be. Emotional dependency on others or on the situations progressing in a certain way leads away from our goal. Trusting that events lead in the correct direction despite their appearances results in inner independence and strength of character. A less obvious form of bad nourishment occurs when we seek to have our lives perfectly secure and unchallenged. Our relationship with the unknown and our freedom from pacts and certainties enables us to be of use in the world. This usefulness nourishes us with inexhaustible nourishment. Therefore, we should not seek to know everything comprehensively or to have consummate power. We should seek only to keep detached and open-minded in response to the challenge of the moment. Changing line number 4. Turning to the summit for provision of nourishment brings good fortune. We turn to the correct source of nourishment when we seek mastery over our inferiors. This effort leads to the help we need to bite through obstacles to unity with others. Changing line number 5. Turning away from the path, one should not cross the great water. To remain persevering brings good fortune. We lack the strength to nourish others through being reserved and self-reliant. The sage cannot make us strong. Although we are dependent on his guidance, we must do the work of disciplining our inferiors. We automatically nourish others in a beneficial way when we nourish ourselves correctly. But when we feed our inferiors on negative thoughts and fantasies, our strength is undermined. Changing line number 6. The source of nourishment. Awareness of danger brings good fortune. It furthers one to cross the great water. The source of true nourishment is the sage, who supports and helps us. All benefits from the sage's intervention on our behalf. The danger referred to is what? Forgive me. The danger referred to is that when things go well, we tend to grow comfortable and careless, forgetting our dependence on the sage. Not only do we forget our dependence, but we also forget the responsibility that accompanies the help we receive. Our responsibility is to work to rescue the others to whom we are connected by inner ties. We rescue them by remaining conscientious in serving what is high and good within ourselves. A careless, presumptuous attitude always incurs danger. Crossing the great water means that it is time to pull ourselves together by displacing the influence of our inferior man. And by disciplining our inferiors, we do this by attending to our inner nourishment. This means we sort out and resolutely discard all thoughts, fantasies, false comforts, and self-deceptions that are unworthy of our inner dignity. Among the most vain self-deceptions is the fantasy that all progress is of our making. We serve the sage when we remember that in all situations, the sage, as a third party, is present. When success occurs, it is always due to having engaged the help of the higher power. We need to remember how we have helped and not forgotten that others who have not yet discovered this wonderful nourishment have potential for good. We forget their good potential when we become preoccupied with their mistakes and bad habits of mind. In detaching and proceeding on our path, we renew our humility and once more become true to ourselves. Being true to ourselves, we are in harmony with the cosmos. Only by nourishing ourselves with humble thoughts can we surmount the dangers and continue to transmit to others the good nourishment we receive from the sage. The sage is readily available to all who seek his help without exception. Anyone who is sincere and open-minded will find himself aided and nourished if he consults the I Ching. Moreover, we must not be deluded by the false tradition that the sage can only be consulted by this or that means, or only so often, or only if we are of a certain age. The sage, source of our nourishment, is always accessible and responsive to the sincerity and humility of an open mind. This completes Hexagram 27.